Hello. I drank a lot of coffee today, and now my mind is racing. I have a focus challenge outside of the enjoyable coffee use. And that challenge is my focus is spread out so wide. There are so many things that I want to do. There's so many things that I'd like to do. But there's no one thing that I'm actually doing that's compounding. Right now, I am fascinated. I want to be a homesteader. I want to grow my own food. I want to grow watermelon. I want to grow vegetables. I want to grow it all. I want to be in that beautiful land and take care of it. And I don't want to pay for groceries anymore. If you don't control your food, how could you control your own livelihood? If whoever feeds you controls you, who controls you? Who's feeding you? What does it mean when you're not the one who feeds yourself? When you don't grow your own food? That means you always have to, that means you're burdened with the eternal question. The question that plagues our minds and hearts. What am I gonna have for dinner? What are we having for dinner? What are we having for breakfast? What's for lunch? I kind of want a snack. Well, are you buying that snack or are you growing that snack? So here's some interesting thoughts to connect it to, right? Something else that I've been learning past few months now, thinking about, or I've been in this mindset where I'm thinking about my place, or not my place. I don't want to say this. I'm thinking about, I'll just say it, regenerative economics. In particular, what does that mean? Well, what's always plagued my heart is I've always, when I've been asked, by my mom and my parents and, peers, what do you want to do when you grow up? It's always like, well, I want to help people. Okay. Help people do what? That means a lot of things. It's too vague, at least for society. But there's a second feeling that came with that, wanting to help people. And that second feeling is, I want to help people, but I also want to do something. I also want to help people in such a way that the way that I'm helping them, I don't have any ethical quandaries or quorums or quarrels on my heart and soul. I don't have to think. I don't feel burdened to think deeply about, the widgets I'm making and how that affects X, Y, and Z. I feel everything needs to be perfect. Everything needs to be circular and feeding into itself. I just want to be free. I want to be free from that blame, that responsibility. I should not have to deal with that responsibility. That is something that capitalistic society, our capitalistic government and capitalistic world, that's its nature. Depend on a larger entity to feed you, clothe you, take care of you, and meet all your needs, to nurture you. Depend on a larger entity and larger entities to nurture you. Capitalistic entities. I don't know. There's a proper way to say that. But depend on these entities to nurture you. That's capitalism. And I don't, that comes with strings. Because then when you buy food, you need to eat, right? So when you meet your need of hunger by going to the grocery store, but just by buying an apple, nothing else, just by making any purchase, you are then contributing to all of the activities and beliefs of that grocery store chain and its constituents. And you probably forgot your bag and you got a paper bag, and you're going to throw that paper bag away. And that paper bag took, 100 gigawatts of energy to make. So effectively that energy was put into making a paper bag. You get what I'm trying to say? So I'm done with that. I don't want that. I want to make my own stuff. I want to make my own things. I want to make my own food. I can grow my food. Oh, and back to what I was saying, capitalism, right? So regenerative economics, how does it all plug back in? Let's move to the regenerative economics room. Okay. So here's the thing. Why am I interested in regenerative economics? And what does that mean? What does that mean in our current system of capitalism? Well, capitalism right now is fundamentally you just extortive. You just take and take and take. There's nothing built in to actually like restore what. So here's a simple way to put it. Right? It's all based on capital. What's capital? Capital is oh man, I don't have a good definition for that. Let me take a step back. Here's what capitalism does, right? Land. Land is the basis, right? So you have the natural world, no one owns anything, but then you own land. There's a finite amount of land. So who owns all the land? Now that we have this thing called capital, now that we have this thing called ownership, that you could own material world and we contractually bind it in society, who owns all the land? The government. The government owns the land, they own the country. The government, though, is not a business, but they have to make money. So how do they make money? They charge taxes, basically a subscription for you to live within the confines of the greater land area. So you are birthed into the subscription. And, there's lots of things you can buy, but, you just want to start like right at the root. So you say, I'm going to buy some land. So you buy some land. And you have that land and it's your land. You can do whatever you want. But the thing is, you got land, everyone else has got land. And if you're a landowner, maybe you're like, I want to actually sell my land to other people, but rent it out to them. Have them live on my land, but pay me. I'm the government now. Pay me to live on the land. Okay, cool. Genius. Do the government play. Okay. So you do that. And then all of a sudden everyone's just like, hey, that guy's selling land and letting us live there. So then you do that. And then everybody's just selling, land and renting out things. So now that's modern developers, right? That's all the developers have. The people who own this building, I'm in an apartment, the people who own the house that you grew up in, or I don't know, somebody owned the house. People who own the apartment complexes, people who own this building in this area and this and these houses and this developments and these condos, whatever. That's the basis, right? That's the basis layer. They own all that. But now that everybody's doing it, what do they have to do? They have to compete. They have to compete. They have to compete because you can go and live in anyone's land. Matter of fact, you're gonna live in the nicest land. The land that just attracts you more spiritually, scientifically, maybe not spiritually, but scientifically. They you put a flower on one land, I wanna live on that land, that one has a flower on it. They do little things, so now they have to compete. So now, where are we? Now there's two influencers of land. First, it was just the government. Here's the land, do what you want. But now it's the government and then a big word, multiplicities of developers. The developers having now that there's more developers than there are government, the developers have the say really on all the land. So what can the government really do? All the government can really do is pave roads, right? You got the land, but the government is like, all right, well, I have the, if you default, obviously if something happens, like the government's just gonna swallow back up the land, right? Let's just say, like, I don't know, things happen and you just can't take care of your land. You go out of business. You can't afford to pay your taxes anymore, whatever. The government will swallow up your land. But the developers move faster than, the government bacteria. So the developers are competing and they're doing this, and that. So now you get to the city and you live in, you wonder why your city's the way it is. It's not actually because the city government designed it that way. In the beginning, when they got that charter, they designed it that way. They designed it, they put this here and the church there and whatever. But then the developers came in, the developers moved faster than the city. So they built this, and they say, you know what, actually, this is where the shopping center is gonna be. This is where the sprawling urban cookie cutter suburban house thing is gonna be. And they put all the things that are generating more capital and money away from the downtown that the city designed. The center that the city designed. The center that the people in the city determined would be, the people who make the city determined would be the fulcrum of community. It doesn't matter. Because everybody's going over there at the Cheesecake Factory to eat every night. And I don't know, I don't go shopping. Big store, right? Hollister. I don't know any popular stores, as you can tell. But they're all going over there to the shopping mall and whatever. So then, now the government really isn't making any money because they don't even own the land over there. They can only charge tax on the developers over there. And meanwhile, they're just sitting here like, they don't got nothing going on. They can barely make any more money. So now there's a power balance. And this is where why you get mad at why your sidewalk looks the way it does and why your community is just like sucks. Because now the government has to compete with the developers. So what do? Well, they gotta charge you. So they gotta build something that they own in the up and coming developer area. And what do they build? A parking lot. And they charge you to park your car. They build more roads. They own the roads. That's all they can do. You can charge you for energy, they can charge you for a parking lot, but they can't be getting your money like the developers can, like these stores can, like these other things in the world can. So it's all flawed. That's chapter 1 that I just finished saying. It's all flawed. Because everything is designed to just like get your money as opposed to, are you making good relationships? Are you healthy? Are people actually talking with each other? Do families know each other? Are families dependent on each other? That's a good measure of life and community. What's the amount of families? What's the family dependent density metric? Because when families are dependent on each other, that's beautiful. That's life. So, all that to say, regenerative economics. This is a different type of economic model. This is the economic model where instead of land capitalism being the basis and just, making more money for the sake of money, which, by the way, at some point, after you tear down all the trees and mine all the gold, kill all the fish, eat all the cows, there's no more grass, there's no more dirt, there's no more air. Eventually there's gonna be no more nothing. And capitalism is not thinking, nobody in capitalism is thinking what happens at that point, because it's always over there. And that's a problem, because that means we're just robbing from the people over there in the future, which is us. So regenerative economics. Well, how does nature actually work? Because clearly nature has been here for a long time. Regenerative economics is building a system in such a way that when you have an asset, land, or when you have capital, the capital is ultimately not just replenishing itself, but regenerating the parts of society, let's say, that have been extorted by capitalism, right? Or just adding surplus, because surplus is inherent of nature. Nature is surplus. You put a seed in the ground, you can get a gazillion plants, fruits, and vegetables forever. That's how it's supposed to be. You don't have to pay a subscription for that. It wants to grow. It wants to nourish you. It wants you to depend on it and it to depend on you. That's a relationship. So, as I'm learning about regenerative economics, which is, there's different types, which I'll invite you to look at, I started to learn about the 8 different forms of capital. Let's move to the 8 forms of capital room. All right. There's 8 forms of capital. We spend most of our time, we have a tendency rather, because of capitalism, to spend most of our time chasing one form of capital. Can you guess what it is? It's financial capital. Financial capital is like your money, I guess. Yeah, that's really it, your finance. And that's problematic, or not problematic, but it can have its problems because money is simply just the next thing that you use, the next thing you buy. Money is just the next thing you buy. It's potential energy. Money, but inherently money is nothing. You can have a bunch of money, but you essentially have nothing. It can only ever be the next thing that it's used. It can only ever be the next thing that it becomes, I guess. It can only be what it's used to buy. That's money. So that's financial capital. Then there's material capital. That is the capital of solid things. Wood, rock, fabrics, my hair, if I sold my hair, stone, you get it, that type of stuff. You could build a house with it, you could build a this with it, you could build a whatever with it. Maybe even plastic, you say plastic material capital. Leathers, things like that. So that's material capital. Then you have the king, the queen, just the love of the universe, living capital. This is the capital of living things. So we could say like trees, vegetables, fruit. These are assets, we can say, and we can call them assets because we're not applying this to traditional capitalism where everything is just a thing, an object. We can call them assets because we're not just seeing them for what they produce. We're just using the term to describe exchange. We're using the term to describe different forms of exchange, not diminishing it, not putting a punitive label on it saying it can only ever be this. We're just using these different forms of capital to describe the different types of exchanges that happen. So from what we talked about so far, you could exchange financial capital for material capital, and you could exchange living capital for financial capital, and the other capitals that we talked about. And the cool thing about living capital, the great thing, is that it regenerates. I would say maybe it's at least right now in my heart, it feels like the basis of how I want my regenerative personal economy to be built on. You could have, look at farmers. You could start with one crop and just keep planting forever. And now there's, we have to talk about how you want to be respectful of ecology when it comes to doing that, but that's a separate conversation in terms of companion planting and making sure that if you're utilizing living capital, you're doing it in such a way that doesn't extort the world like monocropping. You want it to be more like a forest that's dependent on each other as opposed to just a single, 100 million acres of corn. So that's that. Then we have intellectual capital. This is the capital that you just gained from learning, right? It's yours forever. No one can take that knowledge away from you. It's yours forever. It's yours forever. And that intellectual capital, you can continuously lease out in exchange for financial capital, let's say, or living care, any type of other capital, to then, have a profession, have a career, or just, you're a subject area expert in widgets and ding dongs, for example. And I'm sure you could have other examples of what intellectual capital can mean for you. And then you have experiential capital, different from intellectual capital, because this is the capital this is the experience itself. This is the experience you gained, how valuable that is. The exchange that you got. You paid $100 to go skydiving, and that experience of skydiving is worth so much more than, clearly it's valuable to you. It has such a high value to you. Experiential capital could also be like, I don't know, you go to a Latin country to speak Spanish as opposed to just, reading a book on Spanish words. Then you have social capital. And the social capital is like your relationships, right? So again, we're not using capital as a way to say like, oh, you are confined to this thing and I own you and I have ownership. You're a material. No. Social capital is just saying like describing the exchange. So your network, the people you depend on, the people you are exchanging things with in that way, that they are capital because they're so valuable to you. I have no social capital in, I don't know, we'll say like, in the culture of, no, that's a bad one. I have no social capital in Idaho. That's a good one. I don't know anything in Idaho. I don't know nothing, but I have social capital in Gainesville. I have social capital in Atlanta. People in bonds that are formed, and people that, and I define it as like, I would feel comfortable calling them. Like if I had a list, if I was in a bad place and I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna call every single person that I feel comfortable thinking of until somebody picks up. That's how I'm defining social capital, right? And your social capital, again, could become any other different form of capital. It could become financial capital, if in some way. It could become material capital, become living capital. You could, if you've ever gotten a job through someone else, that was the social capital being leveraged, or maybe not even leveraged, but like exchanged, such that now you're put in a position to have experiential capital and financial capital, what have you. And then it's not just limited, like when you exchange things that aren't financial capital, you are likely to get other forms of capital back, multiple forms of capital. It's never just one. Like I can give you money, I'll get an iPhone, or I get an experience, but I get an experience and I get intellectual, I get experiential, I get social, and then you get cultural capital, maybe. You get cultural capital. So what is cultural capital? I think the cultural capital has more to do with now, like, for example, I went to Morehouse College. So the cultural capital that I have is very unique to me. No one else, you could have the experience, you can have the social capital of knowing people at Morehouse College, maybe the experiential of working at Morehouse College, but I have the cultural capital of being the body of Morehouse College. And that's like forever I have that. And I can continue to grow that if I choose to and pour myself into it more. But that's a type of capital that is unique to a cultural setting. Maybe you can apply that in other places. I will let you think of those examples. So then we come down to our last form of capital. And this one is, man. This is the one that I think everybody actually deep down has an abundance of, but we don't pay attention to. We don't do anything with it. It's like we're just sitting on, a mountain of seeds and we don't ever water them. And that's spiritual capital. Pause. Spiritual and capital in the same term? No, it's impossible. How could you say that? Well, I'll remind you again, we're not punitive. We're not saying it's a material thing. We're not doing that. We're just using capital as the term to describe the exchange that's happening, right? And mind you, that all the forms of capital are not measured in dollars. Financial capital is measured in dollars, but the harvest that I get from a field worth of fruit, my living capital, that's not measured in dollars. It's measured in something different. I didn't ever have to pay for that. I could keep reaping all that living capital, and I never have to know what a dollar is. So they work fundamentally differently. The cultural capital being a Morehouse, there's not a dollar amount to that. The social capital, there's not a dollar amount. So we can't think of the 8 forms of capital in one form of capital. So we needed to preface that before we get to spiritual capital. So as we said, capital works in different ways. They could be exchanged with each other. Spiritual capital, that is the capital through the spirit. And we actually already have a term for that. One of many terms, and I don't know, I'm not an expert in spiritual capital, but for the closest example we have of that, it's called karma. Cultivate good karma, it clears out your bad karma. Cultivate bad karma, well, you are cultivating bad karma, and it's going to reflect in your next life. Your next life is going to be a trial or not a trial, but like the court, the next life is going to be like, okay, well, you're in this life because of the bad karma that you intentionally cultivated. Or you cultivated all that good karma, reborn again, good karma life. So that's one that can come from different, you could have different social capital, experiential capital, intellectual capital, living capital, cultural capital, things that all contribute to the spiritual capital. So with all that said, I'm gonna wrap up here because it's getting a pretty long video. That's where my mind is at. I'm getting out of this one capital mindset and I'm blossoming into a multi-capital mindset outside of a dollar amount. So that's all I'll share for now. This video is becoming 30 minutes and I only have an iPhone I'm recording this on. And I had so much coffee. So I appreciate you, dear friend, for listening to me and just hearing me talk about these pressing thoughts I have. I will continue to focus and discipline my focus such that I can produce some capital from these feelings that I have, the emotional capital of me putting it into all these things, all these different thoughts and frameworks. So that's what I feel for myself. I'm moving in a direction where I know that I'm capable of more, and I don't just want to live the rest of my life. I will not live the rest of my life. I'm going to live my life in a multi-capital style, multi-forms of, you know what I'm trying to say. So that's the video. This is probably going to take 1,000,000 years to upload, but thank you for listening. Peace and blessings wherever you are.